Hello, 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 roses. Even if it's the morning time for you, afternoon, or evening, I bring you greetings from the United States in the great state of Michigan, better known as the Mitten State. And you are watching Get Into It with Kimberly Willis. In this show, we talk to different survivors, oncologists, radiologists, caregivers about this ugly disease called cancer. And I am your host, Kimberly Willis, your wellness boutique advocate. And I do that by giving different products and services to help those cancer survivors and their families. I do that by writing books, providing hope and inspiration. I also do that with my t shirt line with Survivors Corner, which you see the link down there, survivorscorner.net, where I offer t-shirts to give you inspiration to fight another day, or even those if you're on the other side of cancer treatment, I help you with that. But I don't stop there. I also help you smell good, y'all. I have fragrances for both men and women. So that's my link. You know what I have to offer, but it's not about me today. It is about my guest. And I am so excited to have our first male guest for this podcast. It was really important for me to make sure that our guests are diverse, that you're not only just seeing females, you're not only seeing those who have just battled breast cancer, but just males. It just our whole universe is diverse. So why not have diverse guests? So I want to no longer prolong the time. I want to read our guest bio, and then I'm going to show you guys the 30-second promo video that he made for you guys, and then I'll bring him on. So Caleb Berger is a health information technology and revenue cycle professional with nearly 10 years of healthcare operations and IT experience. After being diagnosed with testicular cancer, he underwent the standard radical inguinal orchiotomy and has been cancer free for almost 3 years, speaking up about the mental and physical effects of testicular cancer on men's health. And he has a passion, and he says that if you feel something, you got to say something. Caleb is a collegiate graduate of anthropology and a healthcare management and is currently pursuing an MBA, and he is the manager of the Revenue Cycle Information Technology at Shirley Ryan Ability Lab in downtown Chicago, the Windy City, and plans to begin teaching as an adjunct professor of technology at a local university this year. So I'm going to play his promo video, and then we're going to bring him onto the show.
My name is Caleb, and several years ago I was diagnosed with testicular cancer. I think sharing my experiences will hopefully encourage other men to talk to their partners and healthcare providers if they're experiencing issues. Testicular cancer can be a very curable disease until it isn't. So if you're feeling symptoms and you're anxious about talking to your provider, listen to our conversation and hopefully it will relieve some of those anxieties. Thank you.
So, listen, I'm really excited about that. Make sure that you like, comment, and share this broadcast, because I know you guys know a male that doesn't want to go to the doctors or is afraid to go to the doctors. And let's bring in Caleb so we can have this conversation. Hello.
Hello.
How are
Thank you for
you?
having me. I'm doing fine, thank you.
Good, good. I'm so excited to have you on as our first male guest. So you hold the title for that. So that's awesome. And thank you for carving out your time. I know we're in a different time zone and we had to make some last minute adjustments, but I truly thank you for being here today.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to get on and speak up a little bit about my experience.
Yes. So I know I've read your bio, but let's dive into who are you as a person?
Ooh. Who am I as a person? Well, I don't like to be defined as just somebody who had cancer. So
Hmm.
I think that our community probably feels that way more often than not.
Yeah.
I would say that I am a young, charismatic professional that loves his dog and likes to learn things and be outside. Chicago is pretty cold, so
Mhm.
summer's on the way. Um, but I guess just as a person, I enjoy learning and being in the experience of life. I don't know. I don't have too much of I'm not special in any way. So
Oh, no, you are. You are. And first, I just want to highlight your nice, bold background. That is so dope. I love that.
oh,
So tell
thank
us what, for the dog lovers that's out there, what
you.
type of dog do you have?
Ooh, she's a Greyhound Lab mix.
Awesome.
So her name is Gracie. Yes, she's got the long greyhound legs with the tiny paws, but a big old lab body. So she looks a little awkward sometimes.
That's cool. My family has been trying to get us a pet for several years, but because my youngest son has asthma and I also have asthma too, she was saying no pets. So, but then also that's like another kid. I got 4 kids, so it's like I
I
can't
have
do
more
all of that.
dogs, so
So tell us a little bit about your cancer journey. So you had testicular cancer 3 years ago. Share into the insight about how you found it and your journey through it.
yeah. So I think the most interesting part about mine was I didn't have any noticeable symptoms at
Mm.
first, or at least symptoms that I could identify as being a problem there.
Mhm.
Um, I think really when I started feeling something was off was just I would go through these spurts of like extreme fatigue and
Mm.
then um, excessive energy. And the way my oncologist explained that to me was the types of tumors that I had and where they were located. They were, I guess, metastasizing in a way that was like preventing testosterone from making it where it was supposed to make it. So my testosterone level would drop, and then essentially my brain would tell my body that I needed more, so then it would spike, but then
Mm.
it was too much, so then it would drop again. So I think that started happening maybe 3 or 4 months before I noticed anything else. And at first you kind of go through like, well, maybe it's low vitamin D, or maybe you're not getting the right kind of sleep, or maybe, there's like a process to get
Mhm.
diagnosed with anything. And then finally, I started noticing other symptoms. So it was like I started noticing some tenderness in the area, and I thought, that doesn't feel right. But there
Mhm.
was not really a lump or anything. So it was just some tenderness and some fatigue and some pretty excessive mood swings, actually.
Oh, wow.
I've always been a pretty, I feel like, polite person and pretty professional in a corporate environment, but I was doing a mix of getting like legitimately angry at like my boss and people that I was working with at Cerner Corporation, and then I'd be like super sad, and then I'd be super happy, and um, people were like, "What's wrong with you?" And I didn't
Mhm.
know. And then once you're diagnosed, it's very quick. It's very easy too. So you go to your physician, um, and this is, I think, a great segue into if you're worried about it, like physicians talk to
Mhm.
patients about a myriad of things all the time. So you're nothing special when you walk in, and there's no part of your body that you have that someone else doesn't also have.
Yes.
So they did the typical exam, which really just consists of kind of feeling, asking about the symptoms, things like that. And then you do an ultrasound, and my provider was confident that it was a cyst, and he's like, I've never had to diagnose anyone for the last 20 years of practice with testicular cancer. It's always a cyst. You'll be okay. So I went
Wow.
upstairs to the imaging office, and then I got my um, ultrasound, and then I got a call from my provider, and he goes, "Can you come back to the office real quick?" And I knew, I was like, "Oh man."
Mhm.
So I went back, um, and they brought me back into the office, and he's just like, "This is testicular cancer, and you need to have an orchiectomy, and all these things that were going to happen." And it was really interesting because I wasn't too. It's really weird. You think like in the movies, someone gets diagnosed and they immediately are breaking down and they're crying and they're.
Mhm. Mhm.
I don't think that happens to the majority of like actual cancer patients. I think it does happen, I'm sure, but a lot of the friends that I've made, like, from going to my appointments and such, we all kinda had the same experience. It was kinda like they tell you and you don't know what to say or do. You're just like, "Wow, I have this thing that is, like,
Mhm.
supposed to be something on a TV show," and then they're talking and you don't really know what was happening. They tell you all these things that are about to happen, and then you kinda leave and you're just like it was like a whirlwind of information. tons of questions that you want to ask, but you
Mhm.
also don't know how to ask them or like what questions you really do have. You just know you want someone to keep talking to you about it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And I think I was scheduled for surgery 3 days after that, which is a hilarious story that we can get into, but
Mhm.
I might as well just tell you since we're going.
Yeah.
So I had a radical inguinal orchiectomy, which is where they go through the lower abdomen and then they remove the affected testicle all the way up through the spermatic cord. And it was funny because they ask you if you want a prosthetic, so you can get essentially a replacement part.
Okay.
um,
I didn't
and
know
I
that
went
was
ahead
an
and
option.
opted.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. I went ahead and opted to do it because I was like, I'm like 24 or wait, 26, and I don't know. I just wanted it for my own personal like mental well-being.
Mhm.
And so I showed up on a Friday and the nurse, like I was waiting forever, and the nurse comes in and she's like, "I'm so, so sorry." And I was like thinking, what happened? I've been in healthcare for a long time. I'm like, something like maybe the physician got sick or something.
Mhm.
They lost the prosthetic somewhere in the mail. So
Oh my gosh.
literally, I know she was really upset, and I like was dying laughing, and I'm like, "You've got to laugh about this." She's like, "I'm
Yeah.
too upset," and I'm like, I wish I was doing this today because I want to get it over with. But how funny is that? That like you literally lost my replacement part, this particular part in the mail. We just had no idea where it was. So they had to
You
like
need to
take a
track
couple
around
of
your
days.
parts.
Yeah, they had to like take a couple of days to find it. I'm like, God, I hope you have a tracking number.
Oh my gosh. That's crazy.
Yeah, it was pretty
Wow.
funny. So then a couple days later, had the orchiectomy, everything went fine. Um, And then I walked a 5K like literally 4 days after that. So it was a
Wow.
really simple procedure. It wasn't super bad. I was luckily in stage one. Um, and I haven't had a knock on wood. I don't have any actual wood here, but
Mhm.
issues since. So that's kind of my story.
Your story. Wow, you mentioned earlier about, when a cancer survivor is newly diagnosed, that, we're not always in the movies crying. I think part of that reason is because when you are called back to the office, something's off. And I
Mhm.
think that you're already bracing yourself. So you're already having that moment a little bit already. So by the time that you're told, and depending on how it's told, because some depending on the doctor, their tone and delivery is different. Um, you kind of almost already are preparing yourself. So sometimes it's the people who you bring with you that could be a little bit more emotional. I know for me, it sounds weird. I actually was smiling. It was nothing to be happy about, obviously, but it was just like, hey, I'm gonna be all right. I'm looking at my husband like it's gonna be okay. So, because I already processed that when they said, hey, we need to schedule your appointment after 2 days after having my ultrasound, I was like, I think something's a little bit off. So I like how you mentioned that even when they lost your parts in the mail, that
Yeah.
you laughed about it because in order to survive cancer, I truly believe that is a mental game to deal with as well as a physical one. You have to really make sure that you are putting a positive space to be able to fight this journey that you're getting ready to go on to. But I want to really get into this real quick. Why don't men like to go to the doctors?
Oh man, where to start with that? I think part of it is I don't want to. I hesitate to use the phrase toxic masculinity because I know that that can be off-putting to some individuals. But honestly, I think it's a feeling of being emasculated if you have to go in and have something checked down there.
Mhm,
So that's the first part. Second part, you know, I think society in general, men are supposed to be tougher and stronger and able to take care of things themselves and all of these expectations that our society places on men. And
mhm,
so, whenever you do have an issue and it's not solvable by you, or you really have zero input into
mhm.
resolution, I think that can also be super hard for people, right? So, a lot of males, I think, struggle with that. And luckily for me, I think I would have too. I think there's an embarrassment component as well.
Yeah.
You know, to be super honest, like you don't want people to know that you're having a problem there, and you don't want people to know that you're missing one of your testicles. I mean, I guess I'm on here saying it, so I don't really care, but there are a lot of people that don't want people to know that, or they feel
Mhm.
embarrassed by it. And the problem with that is like men's health is human health, and all humans struggle with something, and
Yeah.
all humans have some kind of condition, whether it's something that's physically manifested or if
Mhm.
it's mentally manifested. And that can be a hard thing to face too. So I think the majority of it's probably embarrassment.
Mhm.
And it can be awkward. Like that's your own personal space.
Yes.
And when you have another stranger, even if they are your physician or whomever, feeling around down there and,
Mhm.
the way they do the exam,
Mhm.
it can just be odd and it can be an awkward thing. I was in healthcare. I've been in healthcare for a long time. I started at Mercy Health Systems, based out of St. Louis. Huge shout out to Mercy. It's a just incredible organization. Worked with a lot of physicians and nurses there side by side. So I learned to cope with things that are embarrassing because I saw it. I worked in the ER for several years. And for me, it wasn't as big of a deal, luckily. So whenever I
Mhm.
finally noticed something was off there, I just went ahead and scheduled it right away. I didn't really have to think about it too much. But I know that's not everyone's experience. So
Yeah. I'm glad that you dived into that because I think it's really important because there is an embarrassing factor. Even with myself with having breast cancer, and that's a sensitive thing too. Being a female, we are already invaded with different doctors for different things, for pap smears to having children to just again the physical exams that we have to do every year. So we're already exposed per se already, where the guys may not necessarily have that. So it's a different type of experience for, I think, a male versus a female with that. So dive into the emotional state, into having the exam, and then your treatment plan, because there's things that you have to do. You've had to have surgery, things like that. So talk about the emotional state in that process.
yeah. Um, I think the most difficult part, honestly, was all of the, and continues to be the surveillance appointments.
Hmm.
At first, there's shock, and it's like, I don't. There's no way. Like, nah, that's not me. I don't have cancer. And then there's okay, I have cancer, but I got into the mind space of it's the good kind, which really it's not the good kind, but
Hmm.
luckily it was early. So, as I
Mhm.
said in the promo, testicular cancer is very curable until it isn't curable. And then when it's not curable, then the
Yeah.
prognosis is not good. So people who wait, excessive amounts of time to where they really start experiencing pain and things like that, um, their emotional state probably is a little bit worse because the prognosis, like, you're fine, we can help you, you're fine, we can help you, you're fine, we can help you, but you should get some help soon. And then it's like, oh, you probably aren't going to make it, like that kind of
Mhm.
thing, the longer you wait. And that's with any type of cancer. So I had the shock factor. I had some of the depression. It was a lot of like, why me? Um,
Mhm.
just a little background on just like the people in my life. Like I love my family. I'm very close, but
Mhm.
um, my family has struggled with like drug addictions, and they've struggled with alcoholism. And
Mhm.
I'm the only like college educated person in my family. I go to the gym every single day. Well, not every single day, but like 5 days a week. I don't smoke. I'll have like social drinks and things, but I'm not out doing that all the time.
Mhm.
I'm super focused on my career. I do a lot of like health and wellness initiatives. I do like community service projects. I do all kinds of things like that. And to sit there and be like, I did everything I was supposed to be doing with my life, and
Yeah.
this happened to me. I think that was what got me the most. It was
Okay.
like, how unfair and how frustrating is this that I have to go through this and other people aren't, which is a terrible way to feel, but like you can't help the way you feel. Like
Mhm.
I've done all these things that are supposed to be what I'm supposed to do, and all the people that haven't, they don't seem to ever have the problem. And so
Mhm.
that was a negative mind space to be in. It took a lot to get over that. I
Mhm.
think sometimes there's still some remnants of that, like in the back of my mind. especially when you go for like surveillance, because you go like every month and then you go every 3 months for years. And it's like constant blood draws,
Yeah.
constant CTs, constant talking to a healthcare provider, which is, just like a little piece of it. Then you've got the whole
Mhm.
financial component of it. Like I have to have a low deductible. Like I will hit my deductible before the first quarter ends of any year. So, there's like the financial stress of it. There's the emotional part where it's like, why did this happen? And then the other, I think, interesting thing is you spend a lot of time trying to convince other people that you're going to be okay or that you truly are okay.
Mhm.
For like months and years after, people will still ask, like, are you doing okay? Is everything okay? And it's nice because you know that they care, but
Mhm.
also, leave me alone. Like, I'm not sick. I'm not dead. I'm doing fine. I just got
Mhm.
done walking my dog.
Yeah.
Like, I'm
Yeah.
okay. So I think there's like some frustration, there's some annoyance with things, and then there's some guilt too, because you get used to going to like the cancer centers for like your oncology appointments and things like that.
Mhm.
You're like one of the people there just like surveillance, and you're like, yeah, I didn't really have a horrible experience personally. I didn't have a horrible experience, but like all these other people that I'm sitting in the waiting room with look like they've been hit by a train or something. I mean,
Mhm.
they do not look good. And so then you got to sit there and, you're looking at them, they're looking at you, and
Like, are you the caregiver? Like,
right, right. Then you feel guilty and you're like, ugh, like, yeah, that's difficult too. But I'll say it's not all bad. Maybe you had this experience. The other emotional part of this was I used to work all the time
Mhm.
to take things super serious. And now I don't so much. Like, I'll work hard and I work, if I choose to work over 40 hours and I'm choosing that, but I don't let little things like wreck my mood typically too much.
Mhm.
Everyone's got complaints and stuff, but I think it taught me to, if let's just say, yeah, I hadn't have made it, I would have been 26 and I was like, I didn't accomplish anything but get my degree and then work all the time, 50,
Mhm.
60 hours a week. So I think it changed my life perspective. And I think that was a super positive thing that came from it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as a cancer survivor, you begin to appreciate life more because you realize that something tried to take you out. So you start thinking about your life goals, and if you have obtained those things, and you just think life is too short. Like some of the arguments that you may have with individuals, you try to resolve a little bit quicker. We're humans, so we're still going to get angry. We're still going to go through all those different roller coasters, but you try not to have it last as long because you know that life is so precious.
Yeah.
And I want to be able to encourage you. You had mentioned, you said that, you was doing the straight and narrow and you just don't understand why you got it. And at first I was kind of like that too, but then I realized that there's pain in our purpose. And like you being on this show is a testament of that because you are going to inspire so many men and women because you're helping wives and girlfriends and partners and all of that who is able to say, hey, sweetheart, you need to go check about yourself. And even for the men, they'll feel a little bit more comfortable knowing, like, listen, okay, I'm not the only one who may be experiencing this because there's some men who has breast cancer and like who wants to have that? Like no one wants to have cancer at all. But like testicular cancer and breast cancer are like ones you don't want to say out loud almost because it's like it's a sexual part. So, it's
Yeah.
like yeah, I don't know if I want to dance around this topic at all. So I just wanted to encourage you with that, but to keep on going, keep on being an advocate. That's one of the things that drew me to you because I saw how you were open about your story and how you wanted to help save a life. Because at the end of the day, if what we say can help change a life, it makes it all worth it. There's some individuals that has went to the doctors after watching this show and hopefully that will save their life, and I pray that this will do the same for other cancer survivors as well. But listen, Roses, I want you to make sure that you understand what he is saying about going to see about yourself. You hear it almost every episode from several different people. that says you need to go and check yourself if something is off. It doesn't matter if you're male or female. If something is wrong, please go see about it, because you don't want to look like you've been hit by a bus when you're in in the waiting room. You can look like how we look like. You don't have to look like what you're going through. Some people think that cancer survivors have to look like we're on our deathbed. And that's just not the case. This guy just said he did a 4K walk. Can you talk about this 4K walk that you did 4 days later?
Yeah. So there was a color run, and it was sponsored by Anytime Fitness in Union, Missouri. And I went home after my surgery because I had a bunch of like things that I had to get figured out. So I went back and stayed with my parents for a while, and I felt pretty good, and I didn't want to lay around the house anymore. And I thought, oh, I don't know, I can't run a 5K, but I could walk it. So my
Mhm.
family was like, okay, well, we'll walk it with you, like my little brothers. And so Saturday morning, yeah, I got up, and we didn't walk fast or anything, but we walked a 5K, and it was just good. I mean, luckily, a healthy lifestyle is important for a number of reasons, but when you have a surgical procedure,
Mhm.
the more physically fit that you are, the easier it is to recover.
Mhm.
So I had a pretty, easy time recovering, fortunately.
Mhm.
So yeah, that was about all there is to that story. It was fun. I enjoyed it.
You're very right about making sure that you are fit prior to that really helps your chances with that. With you being already in the healthcare system, how was that dealing with your own personal battle with cancer? So you said you mentioned you've been to the ER and you saw these different things, but when it hit home for you, what was that? Especially when they start throwing that medical jargon at you, which you probably already understood, but it's different when it's for you.
Yeah, so I have been on the revenue cycle side of the industry the entire 8 years I've been in it. So what I was doing at the time at Cerner, I was a revenue cycle consultant at Cerner, and we would design and implement patient accounting systems for hospitals, which
Mhm.
essentially is all clinical care being turned into charges and turned into real dollars that
Mhm.
keep the doors of a facility open, essentially. And so I had an easier time with, I think, the billing parts and expecting when to expect a bill and what I should and shouldn't pay for. I think that's what I understood the most. And luckily, um, this is also a shout out to Cerner Corporation. They're a health information technology company. They're located in Kansas City, Missouri. They are a huge company. Lots of changes happening, good changes. And if you're looking for a place to start a career, grow a career, Cerner would probably be an excellent start if you want to jump into HIT. But through those experiences, I was able to kind of navigate the patient accounting part of my journey, which I think the financial part is probably, I would say it's almost as taxing as the actual physical part, because
Mhm.
you get a different statement from the lab, from your oncologist, from your
Correct.
um, physician, from your imaging centers, to
Mhm.
your oncologist, to I had a urologist. I mean, there were just like all these different places, and they are all on different systems. Cerner's put a heavy focus in interoperability, which means they are trying to get their systems able to essentially be able to communicate with a plethora of other EMRs, or electronic medical records.
Mhm.
But until we get complete and total interoperability, no one has your information. Like all these different places, your information siloed. So that's why you have to provide your information 500 times to like
Mhm.
500 different physicians, especially if they're from different hospitals and things. So that was the most difficult thing to navigate. Healthcare experience definitely was great because I knew what to expect. Um, the medical part of it, I mean, I watch in the ER. The ER is an interesting place too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I used to work 5 p.m. to 2 a.m. through college, full
Oh, you
time.
had the interesting shift.
Yeah, so I mean, there was always some crazy thing happening there, and that was when I was working at Mercy Health. They were a level one trauma center in Southwest Missouri. We saw 98,000 encounters a year. It was insane. But watching other people deal with some of these illnesses, accidents, diseases, and things that, some people would walk in there and they don't leave. And
Mm-hmm.
so I don't know. I've always had a really good frame of reference when things are happening, either from a clinical space or from a financial space, just because of my experiences in the industry. So I'd say that definitely helped and kind of helped focus me. And I knew what to expect and I knew what to look for. And I'm really good at trusting physicians. I know that there should always be a point where you want to make sure that the person that's helping you knows what they're doing. But
Absolutely.
for the most part, having that trust in your healthcare provider going to be super beneficial and super
Mm-hmm.
important, because you're going to have a very long relationship with them.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's not one and done. You don't just have the surgery or treatment. They're life partners with you, like literally life partners
Yeah.
with you with that. I liked how you highlight about the financial piece because you are right. You get several different bills from the several different areas. If you get a CT scan or MRI, or if you're getting an ultrasound, and then depending on what department of the doctor that you're going to, and then those labs, all of those things can become very overwhelming. So if they can get that all integrated into one, that would be so beneficial for not only just cancer patients, but just anyone in the medical industry who has to get procedures done, because you're always getting those things. You're getting your insurance that say, hey, this is not a bill, but here's your explanation of benefits. And you're like, okay, what's this
Yeah.
$35,000 bill or this $600 bill there? And then like, how much do I actually got to pay of that? So all of that stuff can add to it, because if you are in a financial strain and you don't have that cushion, it could weigh on you, because it's like, okay, should I just stop fighting because I'm not going to be able to financially keep up to keep myself alive? That is a real concern for those who are fighting with cancer. You mentioned something very briefly about um, watching the bills and not paying some. Can you explain that a little bit further?
Yeah. So, depending on your understanding of insurances, you have when you get bills submitted to your insurance company, they don't always go in order. Some places
Hmm.
take longer to get your bill out than other places. So really, you might be billed, let's say you have to hit a deductible typically,
Hmm.
which is like the first out of pocket that you have to hit in order for your insurance benefits to start kicking in. And typically
Hmm.
it's 80/20, so they pay 80%, you pay 20%. So when you hit your deductible, then you pay the 20% up until you hit your out of pocket maximums.
Correct.
And then you have like your co-payments and things until you hit your out of pocket. The interesting part though is that, let's say I go to a physician and the bill's $500 and I have a $200 deductible. And I go to the physician and one of them is a $500 bill, but then I go to get an MRI and it was $3,000. I may get that $3,000 bill submitted to the insurance company before the provider does.
Hmm.
And if it's the same data service, the insurance company may pay that pay that first. And so that $3,000, my $500 deductible would have gone to that. And then I'd pay the 20% of the remaining balance from that particular service. And then the provider would submit their bill. Originally, if they had paid first, I'd pay the whole 500 and that would cover the provider. But now I'm paying a percent of it. And
Yeah.
so they may have already pre-billed you something else or given you an estimate that would now be completely off. So like you have to make
Oh,
sure that
okay.
whatever you are paying, you have to go back through and you have to make sure it was submitted to the insurance company and the insurance companies calculated it in a specific order, just to make sure that if you're paying your deductible and you're paying your out of pocket, you're truly paying it because you need to, not because someone messed up billing, which
Hmm.
which unfortunately does happen. So it's
Yeah.
very complicated. That's why medical billing is very difficult. It's difficult to do as a healthcare provider,
Hmm.
and it's difficult to figure out as a patient.
That was really good information, because I never really thought about it like that before, because you are right. You'll have several procedures sometimes on the same service day, and you'll see
Mhm.
one come through, and then like a week or two later they'll finally come along. But I never thought about it that way, about the order of billing. I just thought you had to deal with what you had to, how they processed it, but I didn't realize you can challenge that. But that's really
Mhm.
good that you mentioned that, because they challenge us, because sometimes if there's certain procedures or tests that the doctors want us to take, the insurance company sometimes will fight back. Like, is it really necessary for this individual to get this particular procedure? I have things denied one time that say, hey, you got to have an ultrasound first before you can even get this one. And it's like, for what? We're going to end up at the same place. It's just now you just made it longer. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's the frustrating part with that. So, Roses, if you are in this situation, you say, listen, Kim, listen, Caleb, I cannot try to dissect my explanation of benefits. There are different agencies out there that will help walk you through those medical bills. Sometimes you are assigned a social worker. Use them to help you dissect those things, or to at least get you to understand that, so you're not ignorant to not knowing what your bills are trying to do in your pockets, because at the end of the day, you're going to be the one that's going to be dealing with all of this, and they're just doing their job. So you have to really ensure that it's all straight, but use those resources that is there to help you with that, because you're fighting for your life. Sometimes you just don't have the energy to do that, but use those resources to help with that. Talk a little bit more about your support system. Who was there to help rally you and not to annoy you with all the questions on how you're doing?
Yeah. Interestingly enough, I really didn't say anything to anybody until it came time for, I guess, the actual procedure. So my parents came to Kansas City and they were there with me. My grandparents came down. Um, I've always been kind of a private person. I don't typically, I guess I would say, me personally, the way I deal with things is a little bit different than some. Like, I don't really talk about it too much. And it's not that I don't want to, I just never felt the need to. I've always been pretty independent.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but, having my parents there, you know, being able to go back, and I stayed with them probably for like 2 months or so while I was figuring out what I was doing. That was super helpful. And then my provider was really good. Like, I could email him and he would always respond, like, every single time. So for me, I think I'm very empirical, which means like physical evidence of things is important. And I just want the black and white facts. I don't really care about if someone's like, oh, I'm sure you'll be okay. Like, I don't need to hear that. I need to hear, this is what the procedure is going to be. This is the expected outcome. And this is what you're going to have to do after. Like, for me, that part's comfort, not so much, oh, you're like, when people would say, oh, you're going to be fine. My response was always, what makes you say that?
Mm-hmm.
And it's always crickets. And I know people mean well. And I
Yeah.
think it's important to say, people mean well, but someone like me, I think, especially with like the industry experience, maybe that's where it came from. I don't know, but I always found more comfort in talking to my provider and understanding what is happening to me today, what is going to happen to me tomorrow, and what do you expect the outcome to be in 3 months, 6 months, a year. So
Gotcha.
probably not the answer people expect, but it just kind of is what it is. And that's just how my brain is wired, I guess.
Yeah. Going back to that financial piece, LT Willis said, good point. That could be another reason why men delay visiting the docs, because of the vulnerability and trust. Trust is a part of that journey as well. Thank you, LT. Yeah, that's another thing. Is I almost feel that sometimes guys will be like, okay, I don't want to get poked and prodded. I don't know if I can trust my doctor. I'm just not gonna go. Like, so they were like, no, you gotta go. You gotta go and see about yourself. So if you don't hear anything else today, make sure that you are going to see about yourself. Is really that important to ensure that you are making sure that you are going to self-care, just making sure you are doing the necessary steps to be well. But I want to dive into intimacy a little bit. You said that we could talk about everything, and we're going to do that. And I even wrote it down in such a way that was PG-13. So I'm going to look at my notes real quick. I said that having cancer can disrupt, halt, or change the functionality of your body. Can you share a PG-13 version of your journey on that?
Yes. I will really focus here and try. So to be 100% transparent, my changes, like, my body functions exactly the way it did before.
That's good.
And I think that surprises people. Everything. And really not too many people even notice, or if they do notice, it's like a question and then it's like, oh yeah, I had testicular cancer, and all of a sudden it's, wow, that's really awesome. It's
Mhm.
never had any real negative effect that I can think of on like my sexual well-being. And I think that's super important for guys out there to know, like, everything is still going to work.
Mhm.
Um, People do not care. And, if someone did, do you really want to be sharing yourself with them anyway?
Correct.
I mean, that's like a big part of it. People might think, oh, they're not going to be into it, or they won't be into me. Who cares if they're not into you for that because
Mhm.
you're not dead?
Mhm.
Shame on them. Like, they sound kind of like garbage. So I would say it's fine. It looks all the same, so I don't have any differences, especially getting a prosthesis. It Everything is fine. Like, I didn't notice any changes in like sexual drive, desires, anything like that whatsoever.
It's amazing.
So I think that's like also like a number one thing on guys' mind is like, all these things will change. It doesn't, and it won't. I promise. It was exactly the same before and after. Now that might be different if you have like a double,
Mhm.
but even then, you can get testosterone patches and things like that that function the same way.
Mhm.
Um, and you still will have like ejaculations too. I don't know if that's PG-13, but
Mhm.
that will still happen even if you had
Mhm.
like a double. So, I would say if that's something you're worried about, that's like the easiest and least scary part of the whole thing. The scariest part is making sure you don't get sent to collections by accident.
Oh gosh.
To be
Yeah.
honest,
Okay.
yeah. So if you're out there and you're worried about it, I promise it's not bad. You'll still be as manly as ever if that's your MO. You'll be okay.
That's good. Have you ever felt at any point, from the time you had surgery to the time that you finished and had the prosthesis, that you felt insecure about how you looked? I know you said it looked the same, but have you ever had any ounce of insecurity?
Yeah, definitely. Especially like right at the beginning,
Mhm.
100%. That was like my biggest concern, which is the whole reason I opted to get a prosthetic anyway. Um, and that was just a mental component that you just there's really not a way to like prevent it. There's not a way to make it less, and there's not a way to really get over it until you have your first encounter after that happens
Mhm.
to know that it's okay. But yeah, 100%. And even now, once in a while, I'll think about it and I'll be like when I see my scar, like on my lower abdomen,
Mhm.
like even that, I'm just like, because then if someone sees it or they ask, then you got to talk about it and explain it.
Mhm.
And again, the worst part for me is always "Oh, I'm so glad you're okay," or "Oh," like, it changes the dynamic, and I don't like
Mhm.
when the social dynamic changes based off
Mhm.
of that. Like, if you're gonna hope that I'm okay, like, wish me well on my final that I have coming up or something like that.
Mhm.
I don't like it changing into, "Tell me about your experience," like, that's, like, the
Yes.
worst part.
How soon did you, went back to work, or did you even stop working, through this whole process?
So Cerner was absolutely incredible about the whole thing. They were like, take off as much as you want, um, do the FMLA thing. I mean, they were willing to just let me go.
Mhm.
I my manager at the time convinced me to take off 30 days just to let everything settle and figure out what was going
Mhm.
on. Because after the first week, I was like, yeah, okay, I'm ready to come back, and she's like, you need to take some time even if you don't think you do. So I took 30 days off after. um
Okay.
and really the change, and again, Cerner was awesome with this. It was the surveillance appointments. I mean, I
Mhm.
was having, especially like right after, you have 6 appointments a month, it seems like everyone, you have to follow up with your urologist, you have to follow up with your primary care provider, you have to follow up with the oncologist, you have to get your blood drawn, and then you have to go get your MRI. So like,
Mhm.
or your CT. So I had like 5 appointments, and those are not quick appointments.
Yeah.
Um, so Cerner was really good about giving me the time to make sure that I could get to those appointments. I had a traveling role, so as a consultant, I used to travel like almost every week. They were super accommodating. My clients were super, super accommodating. Shout out to Universal Health Services. They understood, and they, typically they like their consultants on site. And it was very much like, you need to take care of yourself, make sure that
Mhm.
you're okay. So I know corporate America gets a bad rap a lot. And I think there are bad things that happen, but ultimately corporate America is built from everyday people.
Mhm.
And I had a lot of people that cared and just wanted me to make sure that I was okay. So that was kind of how I guess, dealt with that part. But I didn't take too much time off work. I get anxiety when I do that because it's like if I'm not doing something, I feel like something's wrong.
Yeah, you like to stay productive.
Yeah. So like sitting at home too, I'm like, what am I gonna do here? I don't want to sit here all day.
You don't wanna Netflix and chill.
Mm-mm. No.
I gotcha. I think also with having cancer, you mentioned about, when you're intimate with someone, exposes if that's the right person that you need to be with, depending on their response. I think the same goes for corporate America and your employer because depending on how they treat you, because some corporate America jobs treat you like another number, and then some do treat you like you're an actual human.
Yeah.
And yes, we know that all of our jobs are expendable, and it could be replaced at any given time, but when you are shown the value that you bring and how they respond when you have something like this happens, I think um, really expresses how they feel about their workers because again you bring a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience to what you do, and they don't want to necessarily lose that. So I shout out to them for being amazing to you through your cancer journey. I think that is amazing for you doing that. Shout
Yeah.
out to your support system, all your doctors and everyone. And just shout out to just you because, again, with you just speaking about this topic, helping men, but then also just showing that you could still be manly, you could be a man, you can go out and do marathons and whatnot and still carry on with life because some people think that when you are hit with cancer, that it's kind of over, even after you overcome it, that life is different and it is. However, you can make the best out of it, and it sounds like that you're doing that.
Yeah. I think it's important to highlight what you just said about even when it's over, it really kind of isn't because it's like when I get tired, if it's during the early part of the evening and I have no reason to be tired and I slept fine, my first
Mm,
thought is, am I tired because
what's
I'm
going on?
mentally tired or am I tired because like something's wrong? Because if it does come back, they say it'll come
Mhm.
back like in the lymph nodes. And I'm like,
Mm.
I don't know, I feel okay. Like I'm checking, I'm like, I don't feel any bumps.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's definitely a component after it's over where it's not over because it's always in your mind. Like, is this normal or is this a recurrence? So,
absolutely, absolutely. Well, this is the part of the show where we get to dive in a little bit about what you do. So, kind of talk a little bit about your career a little bit and what you do.
yeah. So right now I'm the manager of IT revenue cycle at Shirley Ryan Ability Lab in Chicago.
Hmm.
Absolutely incredible place to be. So we are an acute rehab facility, which means we're a rehab facility that does inpatient and outpatient rehabilitation.
Mm.
I think we're like, is it 30 years in a row or 31 years in a row? We've been rated the number one rehabilitation
Oh, that's amazing.
center. Yeah, so that's a pretty cool designation. It's a giant glass, beautiful building, and it's state of the art. And we are what's called a translational research facility. So if I read from the website, it says the first ever translational research hospital where clinicians, scientists, innovators, and technologists work together in the same space, applying research in real time to physical medicine and rehabilitation. And it's a really cool experience because that means that when you're going through rehabilitation and it's something that we're actively like doing research on, you get paired with a research scientist and like a clinical team. And we create new technologies, we create new prostheses, we build a lot of that stuff like in house. And that's very cool to be part of. So we get to do research as participants too. Like I'm not a research scientist, but I will go down and be a research participant.
Mm-hmm.
And so like a couple weeks ago, I helped with like a robot that goes on the ankle.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the idea is in the future to have have like a prosthetic that is actually able to provide more like normal gaits and walk. So we'll move for you and anticipate where you're going. And then we have like exoskeletons that are we're working on. And it's a really interesting and neat place because we have ability labs. And so in a lot of traditional research facilities, you have like your individual person going through rehab and they work with their therapist and they're in their own room doing their own thing, whereas we have like a very community based, and they're these huge multi-story rooms, and patients will literally work with their clinicians with each other to get through their therapy sessions, which is really, really a neat idea.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't do that like as fun stuff as that. My teams essentially design, configure, implement, and maintain the financial platforms here. So we do all of the making sure charges drop appropriately, making sure patient accounting is able to get bills out the door, both to patients and insurance companies, make sure they're able to come back in and try to be as accurate as we can with it. So that's what I do here. But I find it super interesting. It's really cool. You got to kind of think about it. My team and the revenue cycle operations teams keep the doors open and the lights on, and the research scientists having things to research and the providers getting a paycheck. So
That's
that's
awesome.
kind of how we contribute. Yeah, it's kind of how we contribute. I got to think of it that way sometimes, because I think, man, I should go back to school and do something with some robotics. That would be cool. But the need for what I do and what my teams do here is also like super important, I think. So that's kind of what I do at Shirley Ryan.
That's awesome. I think that is amazing, on your contribution, but also your company's contribution to healthcare. I think that is amazing to be able to have different uh, medical equipment that will assist those who are going through rehabilitation, because that could be a very long and trying time, just trying to get things back to normal, whatever that was injured in that. So we totally thank you for that. I want to pop in and share your LinkedIn information. So if you have any questions like that, you can drop it right there and reach out to him, and he'll respond back, because he responded back to me, guys. So you could do that. But what I also like is just, again, how transparent you are about everything. But speak to someone who wants to get into healthcare and even into IT, like, if that's a profession that they want to get into.
Um, so getting into healthcare, let me tell you a little bit about how I got into healthcare. It was very difficult, and it can be. So I applied at Mercy Springfield for months and months and could not get a position. So I ended up volunteering there for 16 hours a week for about 4 or 5 months before I was given the opportunity to jump into working. So if you're wanting to jump into healthcare, you don't have to wait for your degree. You can literally start by volunteering. And that is the best place to start, because you get to see different parts of the facility. They have typically hospitals have a lot of different ways you can volunteer. So you can, like I was patient escort. So like I would walk patients and families to where they needed to go in the facility. This is where I started. But you could start there to get your foot in the door, and then start applying for support roles. So registration, schedulers, patient care technicians, things like that. And as you work your way up through a facility, then your person that you're reporting to, so like volunteer services, you're reporting to somebody, they can typically help you get in the door. So I think that is probably a good strategy to break into the industry if that's what you're wanting to do.
Okay.
IT is a little more complicated. There are a lot of places that require a degree, whether it's an associate's or not. There are IT certificates that you can get out there. But I think finding I accidentally landed in IT. I applied at Cerner for a revenue cycle consulting role. I didn't realize it was IT. The job description wasn't super transparent about what it actually was. And so I was a little confused when I got there. Thought I would hate it and would leave, but ended up really liking it. And here I am, 6 years later doing IS administrative stuff for a hospital. So jumping into IT, though, I think you probably want to try to think about like an associate's at a minimum, depending on what level you want to get into.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got to put in the work. So you got to learn a lot in IT. You got to learn a lot about operations. You got to learn a lot about integration. You got to learn about your specific platform that you're going to be working on. You got to learn about sometimes programming, depending on what you want to do and what opportunities you want. So if you want to go into IT, prepare to work. It is
Absolutely.
not a quick and easy thing to just jump in. And then, you gotta stick it out. You can have a pretty lucrative career if you stick with it and you try and you work hard. And I would always recommend a bachelor's if you're wanting to move up into like administrative roles and things like that. Typically it's a requirement, or at least it helps. Don't necessarily need to get it, but having that will open more doors for you.
Absolutely.
But yeah, that's about all the advice I have for those two things, I guess.
Good. I want to add that you have to also know how to troubleshoot. Listen, says that you got the help desk. That's IT. So you got to make sure you know how to do all of that as well. And I'm excited. So you said that you are going to be teaching a little bit at a university. Where are you going to be teaching at?
Yeah, that's the hope. So actually, our VP of technology put me in contact with the right person. And I don't want to say the name of the university or anything yet, just because I want to make sure. But I've had a couple of like interviews and things like that. So I'm hoping to be at least an adjunct in IT and teaching a night course. And it would probably just be like the computer 101 class at first, just to kind of see if I like it and if that's kind of the direction I want to go. But eventually teaching like health information tech courses would be really cool, and explaining like how do hospitals use software to support what they do, because you think about healthcare and everyone thinks about doctors and nurses and people like that, and that's an important part of it. But every single one of those people uses some kind of software to complete their work. So I think that would be cool to talk about, like the integration between clinical staff and systems that they use and how they use it and why they use it. So,
I love it. Well, many blessings to you, and praying for whatever is the proper direction for you to go into, that you will walk in through that. Well, this is our time. We're almost at an hour, and I don't want to hold you because I know you got to head back on to work. I truly enjoyed having you today. And for our Roses, thank you for joining today. We know that this program would not be possible without you. If you want to donate to Survivors Corner, that's how you can do it. You know that every time that you donate, will go towards the t-shirts that goes to another cancer survivor in the oncology program, or someone who's going through chemo. That's how we give back with that. So again, Caleb, thank you for being here today. Thank you for spending your lunchtime with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was fun.
All right, guys, I hope you guys have a blessed one, and tune in next week. We're going to have Andy Kale with us. She's coming to us all the way from Australia, guys. So we're going to have an international episode. So we will catch you next week, and I hope you have a blessed day. Bye, guys.